History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. Later, we'll preview a special Historical Society program on Hurricane Dora. But first, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. Our guests are Tony Vecchio, Executive Director of the Zoo, and Jada Osborne, 100-year anniversary coordinator. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
And this is a fantastic celebration, 100 years of the Jacksonville Zoo. A lot of our viewers will recall some of the old days and how impressive it is today. It's become a really major attraction.
Well, if you have any viewers that were there when we opened, I really want to talk to them.
Yeah, well, we don't expect that, but some people will go back to the days when it was struggling.
Sure.
And it has experienced a lot of success, and we're very happy about that, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
I hear that all the time from folks around town who say they haven't been to the zoo in 30 years and are just amazed with the memories they have and what they see now. It's really two different experiences.
And the progress you would attribute to, of course, the basic inherent people liking zoos and so forth, but there's a zoological society, and the city government has been it's been part of city government throughout its history, I guess.
The zoo was a city-owned zoo when it opened,
yeah,
many years ago, 100 years ago, but in 1971, the city and the Jacksonville Zoo Society entered into a public-private partnership, which is a very common model nowadays, but back in 1971 it wasn't. That was cutting edge. But the zoo has been run by a nonprofit zoological society since 1971.
Because it faced some financial difficulties.
Yes, like most zoos in this country, it really went downhill in the 60s, and it was in pretty bad shape.
Well, let's go back to the old days. People may not know the first zoo was in Springfield.
Yeah. Jada remembers those days better than me. Do you want to talk about the first zoo?
Right downtown.
Yeah.
And Jada, you're going to show us some photos from your archives.
I do have some photos. Yeah. The zoo opened in 1914 in Springfield with quite a few domestic animals. Let's see a couple pictures here from those days. We started out with a red deer, black bear. Within a year, we had American alligators. And within a couple years, we had monkeys and oxes, and our collection definitely grew within a few years. But after some awful flooding in that area, we decided to move to the Trout River location in 1924, 1925, and that's where we are now.
Been there ever since, and expanded in that location, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
The zoo has grown quite a bit. You know, there are almost, I don't know of any zoos in the country, maybe just a handful, where the city actually said, we want to have a zoo. Let's plan one and build one. Most zoos kind of started the way ours did. It's kind of almost an accident. Someone happens to have a couple animals and then a couple more animals, and they put them in a city park, and pretty soon you have a zoo.
It just evolved.
And that's kind of the history of our zoo. It just started out very slowly, in fact, with one animal, the red deer baby, and it's grown into what it is now.
And although I don't think we have a picture of this, one of the interesting things to me about the old days was there was a kind of drive-through zoo. You could stay in your car and drive past the animals in their cages and whatever, and see the zoo without getting out of your car.
Well, I know as a historian you'll appreciate this, but the school of thought in those days was really based on Olmsted's architecture for city parks. A park was a place where people went and could just wander as a family and experience different things. So you might come across a concert in the gazebo and then go around a bend and you'll see bears in a cage, and then there was a place to ride the carousel. So you just kind of wandered around the park. The zoo was never really in one place and enclosed. And that started to happen in the 60s with lots of urban problems and vandalism. The zoos began to consolidate all the animals into one space, and the zoo became a little separate from the rest of the park. So a very common model all over the country. Olmsted gets credit for it in a lot of cities. Not the case here, but it was the similar experience where people could just drive to the zoo and It was more of a day in the park than it was a trip to the zoo.
And actually, in our airport gallery, we have a 100-year anniversary dedicated gallery at the Jacksonville Airport, and we have a piece of that road that you were able to drive down
Oh, really?
to showcase there. So if anybody wants to visit that original piece.
Reminds me of that South Florida Lions country, except you stayed in your car because the animals were not in cages.
Right.
So it evolved and added animals and added, and of course moving out to the north side was the key because you needed more space, and there were increasing complaints, I guess, from people who didn't like to have a zoo next door.
Right, the noise, the smell. But there were a couple different locations that were discussed. The beaches was actually a location that was discussed, but not quite sure what led to the decision in the Trout River, but we're all glad that we ended up in the Trout River. It's an excellent location.
And then there came a time, I recall, that there was thought about bringing the zoo back downtown.
Not that long ago.
And not a very good idea.
No.
But fortunately, that idea came and went, and the zoo is still out there, and it's a great location. It's accessible, and accessible by water.
Yes, one of the only zoos in the country that you can take your boat to the zoo and enter by boat. It's a unique feature, and just beautiful sight to be right on the Trout River. It's just, it's gorgeous.
Well, let's talk about, you've done a lot of research for this anniversary, 100-year anniversary.
I tried.
Some other highlights that we want to focus on.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of growing in the last 20 years. We had an award-winning exhibit, Bill, in what year?
2004.
Thank you,
and
Tony.
it won the award in 2005.
Yeah, best exhibit in the country. And right now, this year we opened Land of the Tiger, and we're really hoping to get the same award again.
So what was the first one that got the award?
Range of the Jaguar.
Range of the Jaguars.
Yep, we brought the Jaguars to the zoo.
It was a quantum leap for the zoo. I
Yeah.
think starting in 1990, the zoo started to get a little better every year, a little better, and then in 2004, it was a giant leap forward when that exhibit opened.
And now again with the Tigers. The Tigers are fantastic.
That has taken us to a new level. That's an
Absolutely.
innovative exhibit, very bold, and you won't see that anywhere else.
And some people may not realize the Jacksonville Zoo is not just an attraction for Jacksonville. You get a lot of people, school field trips and so forth from the whole South Georgia, North Florida.
And out on the Panhandle. I was walking around the zoo with a city council person, and I was telling them what an important economic driver the zoo is for the community, that people come from all over. And as a good elected official, he decided to test me to make sure I was telling the truth, and walked up to a group and asked where they were from, and they were from Tallahassee and had driven a couple hours to be here and take their zoo field trip. But we are the nearest zoo for a lot of places in Florida.
I've seen license plates from Michigan, Illinois, from all across the country just to visit our zoo. So, yeah, we're very proud of that.
About 25% of our visitors come from other states.
Really?
So that is a couple 100,000 people a year visiting from other states. That's important.
And what's the gate total per year?
Well, last year we had 816,000 visitors. It was an all-time record for us. And
Wow.
this year we are on a pace to break that record.
So getting closer and closer to 1 million.
When I was hired 5 years ago, the board made it pretty clear that they thought a zoo our size in an up-and-coming city like Jacksonville should have 1 million visitors a year. So that's been our goal. That's a target for us, and we're getting there slowly but surely. I don't know if you can call it slowly or not, but
Yeah,
you add 50,000 more visitors a year. That's a pretty nice pace.
absolutely. So, Jada, let's see some more photos.
Some more pictures?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's see what we got here. So this brings up a good topic. Miss Chick is one of the original Asian elephants that got brought to Jacksonville. And a fun fact about that is actually some of the money that was raised to bring Miss Chick here, I believe from Germany, was raised by school children in the Jacksonville area. They raised about $3,000 to bring her here. And she was named after the original city commissioner that opened up the Jacksonville Zoo, or pushed for the Jacksonville Zoo to be here. So
And that was Chick Acosta.
yes,
Yeah.
Chick Acosta. So so that's one fun fact, and it's rumored, and there's a legend that she is somewhere on ground. So it'd be really interesting to
Yes.
find out where she is on ground.
So a mystery that probably will remain unsolved, or
Probably, but
you're not
it's
going to go
fun to-
excavating looking for an.
Someday we'll be building a new exhibit.
And you'll find that elephant.
We'll find Miss Chick.
It'll be a fun find. It'll
Yeah.
definitely be a fun find. Another elephant fact, we had a baby elephant in '96. Her name is Rainey. Is one of the last Asian elephants that we had. After she left Jacksonville Zoo, we brought in African elephants. So she's right now in St. Louis. She's had 3 calves of her own, and she's up there with her mother, Ellie. Ellie was also a Jacksonville resident. Yeah, just continuing bringing, Asian elephants to not just Jacksonville, but the country. We contribute to the whole country. So today is actually World Elephant Day, so that kind of sticks to the same theme. 96elephants.org is a conservation project that we're celebrating in Jacksonville Zoo, and all the staff members at Jacksonville Zoo are very supportive about that. So we do a lot more than just elephants, obviously. So with Land of the Tiger opening up, that was very conservation based, and decided, that we're not only bringing these animals here, but we're going to support why they're here, be ambassadors and educate the public here in Jacksonville. So
I like to tell people, historically, the mission of the zoo has not changed, which a lot of people who know zoos think, well, it really has changed. The mission of the zoo has always been to make our community a better place. Just happened to be back in the 1920s and the 30s that the way to make it a better place was to create an entertaining venue for families. And now it's a lot more than that. People demand more than just to see strange exotic animals. They want to know that they're being well taken care of. They want to know the zoo is helping those animals in the wild. So conservation is something we do now that we didn't do in the old days, but it's still all about, because that's what our community wants us to be doing.
And something else, you do a great job of providing information to children about animals. So it's a very educational experience.
100,000
And
school
maybe not want
children
to
a
use
year.
that word because it turns kids off, but
Yeah.
it is educational.
yeah.
Yeah.
All Duval County school children are able to
Yeah.
visit through field trips for free to the Jacksonville Zoo. So we're very proud to have that for them.
In the early days of the zoo, I think the city may have purchased some animals. Now, you don't do that anymore, do you?
No, because all zoos are concerned about conservation, the buying and selling of animals has kind of gone by the wayside, and we all work cooperatively now. And we don't look at any other zoos as our competition. We're all in this together to save wildlife and wild places. So we loan animals
There's a
to
loan
each other.
program.
And the only reason it's a loan and not a gift is we want to be sure that if another zoo got into some kind of financial trouble and they weren't taking good care of our animals, we could always call them back. So we loan animals out, and we get animals in on loan, but not much buying and selling anymore. Those days are gone.
Are there animals that on your wish list that you would like to have that you don't have yet?
Oh, I have so many favorite animals. I'd love to
do
hear what
too.
Jida has a different perspective than I do, but the next phase of the zoo's master plan for me is a very exciting one. It's kind of the final phase of our master plan, and that'll be the continuation of the Asia area. And there are some very interesting animals in Asia. Orangutans would be one of those animals we'd like to bring, as well as Indian rhinoceros. There are some bears. And the zoo has an interesting historical story about bears. I might let Jida tell you that one. But there are some bears that would love the climate in Florida and would do quite well here. And those are Asian bears like sloth bears that live in tropical
So
forests.
what about the bears, Jada?
He's most likely referring to our polar bear experience. We are famously known for our green polar bear.
Right.
As a learned lesson, polar bears do not belong in southern zoos. And unfortunately, our polar bear grew green algae on his white fur. So after years of trying it out, now we no longer have polar bears, and I don't foresee it in any future to bring them back.
So the climate is a challenge for some animals.
Some animals, yes. And,
Because this is not their native habitat.
yeah, some bears do well in hot weather, but other bears are cold weather.
Yeah.
And polar bears especially. Polar bears, as an insulating factor, have hollow hair. And when you put them in a southern climate like this with a lot of rain and humidity, they get algae inside the hollow shafts of their hair. So you can't just spray something on it to get the green out. They stay green once they're green, and you really don't want to be known for having green bears at your zoo. But that's what our zoo was known for, and still is. Some people still remember that.
Yes.
I think at one time the zoo was famous for the collection of bears. We had 8 different species of bears back in the 60s, and I think if you want to be famous for bears, the thought must have been, well, we got to have polar bears if we're going to be a bear zoo.
And most bears can thrive in North Florida.
I'd say about half of the species do
Really?
well. As we all know, black bears are native to Florida, but there are South American bears like the spectacled bear, and a couple species from South Asia like the sun bear and the sloth bear. So there are some. I would say grizzly bears and polar bears, probably not. They enjoy cold weather.
So let's look at some more photos, Jada.
Sure. Let's see where we're at here. So this is an interesting photo. This is actually when we first built Mombasa. That's our main gate area. And we actually had native Africans
I remember.
Yes, to come over and build the rooftop of the main gate area. So that was really interesting.
Yep.
And
They
that
knew
was
how to do thatch, didn't they? That was in the mid-90s?
mid-90s, that's
Yeah,
right.
I think one of your predecessors was visiting Africa and got this idea.
Dale Tuttle was the director back in the 90s. Dale was an interesting guy. He was a visionary zoo director and really got the zoo going in a good direction back in the 90s with not much to work with.
And the ideal thing was to bring them over here and let them build right here in Jacksonville.
In addition to being a great zoo director, he was an avid traveler and used to lead trips to Africa. So he really fell in love with Africa, and I think he wanted to do things genuinely. So he managed somehow to get these Zulu craftsmen to come to Jacksonville, which talk about a culture shock, and
Indeed.
and do the thatching on the roof. So that
And they did it barefoot as authentic as they can. They were definitely expertise in that.
I think they drove the OSHA inspectors absolutely crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have technical difficulties.
Yeah, so when you go to the zoo, as you're waiting in the admission area and you look at those thatch roofs, that's the real thing. That is thatch the way it's done in Africa by African craftsmen. So, there's so many little details that make the zoo special that folks don't realize what's gone into it. And we are a zoo and gardens.
I'm glad you mentioned that. At a certain time, the name of the place was changed to reflect the fact that you're doing gardens as well as a zoo.
And about 10 years ago, the city officially recognized it as a zoo and gardens and not just a zoo. But
So there's emphasis on that part of the operation.
And there are other zoos in the country that call themselves zoo and gardens, and in those cases the gardens are in a separate area. The zoo is in one place and the gardens in another place. At our zoo, the gardens are integrated into the zoo. We call them pocket gardens. So as you're walking through the zoo, you'll come across a garden, and then you'll see animals, and then garden again. So a lot of people have a wonderful time, really appreciate the environment and the experience, but without even realizing they've been to a botanical garden. It's just, it creates an atmosphere and a feel that is just
And
really special.
it works better than separating them.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And because, you know, we are an educational facility. In the old days of just walking down a row of exhibits and seeing one animal after another, those are gone. We try to teach about habitats now and how all the animals are kind of interrelated and interdependent on each other, and the plants are part of that story too. So being able to show gardens and animals side by side is an important lesson.
We have an amazing department that just really strives to make sure they make the whole area where these animals are from very authentic and plant species from that area and everything, and it really puts a great feel, just as Tony was saying, you know, to the zoo. So,
So we have a botanical master plan at the zoo. All zoos have a master plan for what their animal collection is going to look like, but I don't know of any zoo that has a botanical plan. So it's not just we have some people that like plants and they go out and plant petunias because they think they look pretty. We actually have a well thought out, designed plan for the future of horticulture at our zoo.
And the loan program that you mentioned, you loan animals to other zoos and they loan animals to you, so it works both ways.
Yes, right now I think we have probably 150 animals in the zoo that are on loan, and I think we have 60 or 70 that are out at other zoos on loan.
some of those loans are well planned out as far, well, all the loans are well planned out, but part of a species plan, so breeding programs to make sure that the populations within the country are a good representative of that species, and we don't have to go outside the country if we don't have to. So they have, you know, people designated to keep track of who's breeding with who and what animals can go to what zoo and breed with that animal, and it's a very great program, and it really keeps the populations here.
I call it computer dating for animals.
That's a good way to put it.
A lot of thought goes into which animal should go with which
Yeah.
animal, and there are committees of experts that make those decisions.
Well, folks can find out a lot more on your website about the history of the zoo, and it's a very nice website, a lot of information that people can find there, which is, what's,
JacksonvilleZoo.org.
okay.
Yep, absolutely.
And Tony Vecchio, Jada Osborne, thank you very much for being on the Jacksonville History Show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And stay with us. When we come back, we'll talk about a special Historical Society program on Hurricane Dora.